Gollum killed Frodo's parents. The theory argues Gollum was already westbound after losing the ring, chasing any clue tied to Shire and Baggins. That chase might have taken him right to the Brandywine River, where Drogo and Primula just happened to be boating. And that's where it gets eerie. Hobbit rumors already whispered the accident wasn't so accidental, and Gollum had every reason to think any Baggins might lead him back to the ring. He'd already killed once for it. Floating near rivers, ambushing quietly, it's all in his wheelhouse. The struggle could have easily led to the drowning. Even Gandalf admitted Gollum turned near a great river before heading south. Theories stretch the timeline just enough to place him there. It's grim, but oddly plausible. Gandalf wasn't actually a wizard, but was just pretending. Fans pushing this theory argue he pulled off the greatest long con in Middle-earth history using props, flair, and dramatic timing. His fireworks, not magic, just explosives. His glowing staff moments, stage lighting with elven batteries. Instead of spellcasting, he leans on strategy, manipulation, and an intimidating presence. Reddit threads break it down like he's a battlefield illusionist, not a spellslinger. His rare displays of power are almost always tied to items, his staff, Narya, or sheer theatrics. Even in battle, he fights like a warrior, not some arcane powerhouse. They say he's more like a crafty tactician with a costume budget than a wizard. His influence comes from reputation, not raw power. He plays the part perfectly. By the way, if you guys like movie content like this, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, Gandalf is Eru Iluvatar, the omnipotent creator of Middle-earth. Fans behind this theory dig deep into Tolkien's mythology, starting with how Gandalf literally returns from death after the Balrog fight, a miracle credited to Eru himself. Instead of assuming Eru sent Gandalf back, they suggest he was Gandalf all along. At the bridge, Gandalf says he's a servant of the secret fire, which some argue ties directly to the flame imperishable, Eru's core creative force. The idea is that the being above all Valar and Mire chose to walk among them, quietly guiding events while disguised as a Mire. He never flaunts omnipotence, but always shows up where it counts, shaping fate, nudging heroes, and guarding the world's balance. Some fans even claim Eru hid his identity to avoid alarming the Valar. Sam, Merry, and Pippin were backup hobbits. This theory claims their presence in the Fellowship was about insurance. Elrond and Gandalf, knowing the ring's danger, allegedly picked them as alternate carriers in case Frodo failed. Hobbits had proven resistance to the ring's pull, making them the safest bets. Fans point out how odd it is that 4 small, untrained hobbits made it onto the team instead of more experienced warriors. Merry and Pippin weren't even supposed to go, yet somehow got included. Strategically, say theorists. If Frodo fell, another hobbit could quietly step in and keep the mission going. Sam's loyalty, Merry's brains, and Pippin's unexpected courage made them perfect candidates. It was a plan, a silent backup system. Hobbits' hunger comes from their biology. Fans backing this theory say it's baked into their bodies. Being small means their metabolism runs hotter and faster, which lines up with biology in the real world. Smaller creatures burn through energy quickly, so hobbits needing 6 meals a day is survival. Tolkien even lays it out in the prologue, listing meal after meal like it's completely normal. Their hearts would beat faster, they'd lose heat quicker, and their caloric needs would spike compared to larger folk. Fans point out that missing a meal might actually affect them more severely than it would a human or elf. Constant snacking and frequent meals could be how they stay upright and conscious. Their legendary love of food, then, may not be luxury, it's evolution. Snow White is a Lord of the Rings sequel. Fans behind this theory love pointing out that The Hobbit and Snow White released just a year apart, which they say is continuity. The idea is that Snow White lives in a distant future after the War of the Ring, possibly as a descendant of Aragorn and Arwen, their royal bloodline echoing through the ages. The 7 dwarfs? They're thought to be the last of the ancient dwarf lords who once held rings of power, now faded into mining, song, and suspiciously good work ethic. Even the prince's kiss is interpreted as Mire-like magic, a leftover spark of mythic power from Middle-earth's divine forces. The enchanted forest and talking animals. Fans argue it's lingering magic from an older world, reshaped but never truly gone. Gandalf only pretended not to understand the doors of Durin. Fans backing this theory say he was stalling. The password, Melon, wasn't exactly cryptic, and Gandalf's deep knowledge of Elvish should have cracked it fast. But instead, he draws it out, pacing, muttering, making it feel like an unsolvable riddle. Supporters argue he did this on purpose to build tension, test the Fellowship's nerves, and maybe let the hobbits contribute something meaningful. Gandalf had passed through Moria before, so it's possible he already knew how the door worked. That makes his delay feel less like confusion and more like performance. Merry blurting out the solution fits neatly into the idea that Gandalf let others rise to the moment. His theatrics made ancient magic feel unreachable, even when the answer was right there. Denethor becomes violent because of lead poisoning. Fans pushing this theory focus on the unsettling feast scene in The Return of the King, where Denethor chomps tomatoes and drinks from a pewter cup. Pewter, historically, often contained lead, and acidic foods like tomatoes can pull that lead into the meal. Supporters argue that this detail was a subtle clue. Constant exposure to lead, especially through food and drink, can cause neurological damage, aggression, mood swings, and impaired judgment. Denethor's spiral into madness from refusing aid to ordering Faramir's death is seen by these fans as behavior consistent with lead toxicity. His erratic decisions and emotional instability might not just be grief or despair, they might be the slow burn effects of poisoned dining habits. The Entwives were a casualty of Saruman's greed. Fans who support this theory believe Saruman's destruction of nature finished what Sauron started. The Entwives once lived east of the Anduin, creating gardens and teaching farming, but those lands were scorched during the War of the Last Alliance and became the Brown Lands. Treebeard mourns their disappearance and the loss of their gardens. Supporters argue that Saruman's tree felling in Fangorn and the industrialization of Isengard mirror the same environmental devastation. The Entwives valued order and cultivation, and Saruman's obsession with machines and power destroyed the kind of land they needed. His war-driven destruction made it impossible for them to return or survive. In this theory, Saruman's greed becomes the final blow to the Entwives' existence. Gandalf wanted to take the eagles to Mordor. Fans of this theory believe Gandalf had a secret plan involving the great eagles to fly the ring into Mordor. After escaping Orthanc with Gwaihir, he didn't go straight to Rivendell, which some see as a clue he meant to rendezvous with the eagles again. His last words in Moria, "Fly, you fools," are read by supporters as a subtle reminder of that hidden strategy. Gandalf and Gwaihir shared mutual respect, with past rescues showing deep trust, and theorists think he might have arranged a covert plan to use that alliance when the moment was right. Since secrecy was key, the idea is Gandalf kept the Eagle plan to himself to avoid tipping off Sauron. His death at Moriu ended that option. Tom Bombadil is the Witch King of Angmar. Supporters of this theory claim the two share eerie overlaps, starting with their ability to perceive Frodo while he's wearing the ring, something only a few powerful beings can do. Tom's immunity to the ring's power is seen as a possible echo of the Witch King's bond with it under Sauron's control. Bombadil's origin is vague, and the Witch King's early life is a total mystery, creating space for a dual identity. Some fans argue Tom's strange control over Barrow-wights, who are linked to Angmar, hints at a darker past. Others point out they never appear in the same place ever. His cryptic knowledge and the fear he inspires in ancient spirits adds more fuel. Maybe he never left the darkness, he just changed his name. The Hobbit films were Bilbo's exaggerations. Fans backing this theory say the over-the-top action, added characters, and epic drama are all just Bilbo stretching the truth in his memoir, There and Back Again. He's a known storyteller, and the Red Book tradition treats his writings as edited and possibly biased. Supporters argue the movies reflect his version of events, not an objective history. Scenes like barrel fights, Azog's extended role, and Legolas showing up uninvited aren't in Tolkien's text, but make sense if Bilbo's spicing things up for readers back in the Shire. He rewrote and expanded his tale after returning, and Gandalf even says good stories need embellishment. The film's wild tone could just be Bilbo remembering things bigger, flashier, and more heroic than they really were. Gandalf manipulated the events of The Hobbit to deny Sauron a powerful ally in Smaug. Fans of this theory point to Tolkien's appendices and unfinished tales, where Gandalf admits he feared Sauron might recruit the dragon. His choice to involve Thorin and push for the Erebor quest wasn't just about dwarvish pride, it was strategy. Smaug sat dangerously close to Sauron's rising power in the east, and if left alone, could have been used to attack Rivendell or the north. Gandalf's random meeting with Thorin was actually a calculated move to eliminate a future threat. He needed the dragon gone before the war began. Fan discussions highlight how Gandalf's decisions were about tipping the balance of power before Sauron could claim it. The Lord of the Rings story is an allegory for World War I. Fans supporting this theory highlight Tolkien's service at the Battle of the Somme, where he witnessed mass death and destruction, and draw parallels to the dead marshes filled with corpses and mud. That eerie landscape reflects the battlefields of northern France. The massive alliances in the War of the Ring mirror the Allied forces fighting against a dark empire. Samwise is often linked to the ordinary British soldier, brave, loyal, and enduring trauma. Frodo's post-war exhaustion and inability to return to normal life resemble veterans coming home changed forever. The scarring of the Shire reflects industrial damage to pastoral lands. Even though Tolkien rejected allegory, fans see deep echoes of World War I pain throughout Middle-earth's darkest moments. Sam and Frodo's relationship has queer undertones. Supporters of this theory point to their deep emotional intimacy, physical closeness, and unwavering devotion as signals of something beyond typical friendship. Sam frequently holds Frodo's hand, cradles him, watches over him while he sleeps, and pledges himself with language filled with affection and loyalty. Fans and scholars argue this aligns with historic romantic friendships and queer-coded bonds, especially when viewed through modern lenses. Sam's refusal to leave Frodo, even at his own peril, has been read as love in action, not just duty. The cinematic portrayal enhances these elements, emphasizing emotional dependence and touch. Academic discussions and fan communities alike have explored this bond as a potential queer dynamic, noting its resonance with real-world expressions of same-sex affection and devotion. Gollum tripped and fell into Mount Doom due to his oath to Frodo. Fans supporting this theory believe his fall was the result of breaking a sworn promise. Gollum had pledged to serve Frodo and not harm him, binding himself under the ring's influence. When he attacked Frodo, bit off his finger, and took the ring, he violated that oath. Supporters argue the moment he broke his word, the metaphysical weight of that betrayal triggered his fall as a form of cosmic consequence. Frodo had even warned him that if he turned violent again, he'd be cast into the fire. Some interpret that as a command the ring itself obeyed. Tied to Frodo's will, Gollum's fall becomes justice, not misstep. Westeros is the future version of Middle-earth. Fans who support this theory argue that Westeros exists thousands of years after the events of The Lord of the Rings, shaped by time, continental drift, and the fading of magic. As Middle-earth aged, its high fantasy elements, elves, dwarves, hobbits, vanished or evolved into new mythic forms. The Children of the Forest are seen as descendants of hobbits, while weirwoods are viewed as a possible evolution of Ents. Ancient ruins and lost kingdoms in Westeros mirror the decline of Numenor or the fall of Gondor. Both worlds feature old prophecies, great walls, and relics of forgotten wars. Over time, history's warped into legends, leaving behind a grittier world driven by politics. Westeros, in this theory, is magic's final echo. Legolas has an unlimited supply of arrows. Fans backing this theory point to the films where he fires dozens of shots in massive battles, Helm's Deep, Aemon Hen, Pelennor Fields, without ever visibly restocking his quiver. It never empties, and he never stops. This has led to speculation about a magical quiver, possibly enchanted by elven craft to auto-replenish arrows. Some call it a quiver of holding, a fantasy trope for infinite storage. In Tolkien's books, Legolas does run low and scavenges arrows, but the movies skip those moments, creating the illusion of endless ammo. Online discussions and memes have embraced the idea, suggesting he either collects arrows off-screen or uses some elvish gear that's never explained. His flawless precision and unbroken supply only deepen the mystery. The Lord of the Rings is a lie written by Sam. Supporters of this theory argue that the entire story is a biased retelling crafted by Sam Gamgee himself, who becomes the final author of the Red Book of Westmarch after Frodo departs. Tolkien framed the story as a historical manuscript written by the hobbits, not as an objective account, and Sam is canonically one of its scribes. Fans suggest he had the motive to reshape the events, amplifying his role, downplaying Frodo's failures, and telling the story in a way that honored his friends. They point to adaptations like Hobbit, where an older Sam narrates events as further evidence. In this view, The Lord of the Rings is Sam's version of the truth, edited, emotional, and maybe not entirely accurate. The Hobbit's CGI reflects Bilbo's storytelling. Fans who support this theory argue that the trilogy's exaggerated visuals and heavy use of CGI mirror Bilbo Baggins' flair for storytelling, turning the films into a stylized version of There and Back Again as he might have told it. Unlike The Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit films are lighter, more cartoonish, and packed with larger-than-life creatures and improbable stunts. Supporters see this not as inconsistency, but as intentional or symbolic. visualizing Bilbo's embellished, imaginative retelling. In Tolkien's lore, Bilbo is known for his creative narration, and he authored the Red Book, meaning the story is filtered through his memory and style. The CGI spectacle becomes his whimsical voice made cinematic. Boromir was poisoned by the black blood of Sauron. Supporters of this theory argue that Boromir's downfall was from a physical taint he received after cutting himself on Narsil's shards. In The Fellowship of the Ring, he's shown gripping the broken sword and slicing his finger on the very edge that once severed the ring, and Sauron's finger, from his hand. Fans speculate that if any of Sauron's essence or black blood remained on the blade, it could have entered Boromir's body, subtly corrupting him. His mood begins shifting afterward, growing more restless and paranoid. Proponents say this supernatural contamination heightened his vulnerability, making him more easily twisted by the ring. Some even compare it to the Nazgul's black breath. Gollum is a manifested personality of the One Ring. Supporters of this theory argue that the Gollum persona is the ring itself expressing its will through a living host. The ring is canonically described as having its own agency, actively seeking to return to Sauron, and influencing bearers with increasing force. Fans point to Gollum's obsession with the ring, his use of we and us, and his violent swings in behavior as signs that the ring's mind is speaking through him. The precious voice is seen as the ring's own, not Smeagol's. Some theorists propose that Gollum serves as the ring's avatar, a physical extension of its desire to survive and manipulate others. His identity may be the ring's projection. Galadriel's gift to Gimli means more than people think. Fans of this theory argue that her giving him 3 strands of her hair is deeply symbolic, not just sentimental. In Tolkien's lore, Galadriel's hair contains the light of the 2 trees of Valinor and was once desired by Fëanor, who asked 3 times and was refused. Yet Gimli, a dwarf, receives not 1 but 3 strands, an act seen as powerful and unprecedented. His request is humble, sincere, and full of admiration, contrasting Fëanor's arrogance. Supporters say this moment represents a breakthrough in elf-dwarf relations and honors Gimli's pure heart. It also reflects Galadriel's recognition of character over race. The gesture becomes a symbol of healing, unity, and respect that ripples through the Fellowship and beyond. Sauron enslaved Saruman after his death. Supporters of this theory point to how both Saruman and Sauron, as fallen Maiar, left behind ghostly forms after their physical destruction. Saruman's spirit rising like mist before being blown away by a cold wind, echoing Sauron's shadow form after the ring's destruction. Fans argue that this shared imagery signals more than coincidence. Saruman had already been spiritually compromised through the Palantir, where Sauron bent his will and corrupted his purpose. The idea is that this influence didn't end with Saruman's death, but persisted, binding his spirit in servitude even in disembodied form. As both were immortal spirits twisted by power, the theory suggests Sauron's grip extended beyond the grave, turning Saruman's wandering soul into yet another enslaved remnant of the Dark Lord's will. Grima Wormtongue might have eaten some hobbits. Supporters of this unsettling theory focus on the Scouring of the Shire chapter, where Saruman tells Frodo that Grima killed Lotho Sackville Baggins, and then adds that Wormtongue has been very hungry lately. The fans interpret this as more than a cruel taunt, seeing it as a veiled hint that Grima not only murdered Lotho, but possibly consumed him. Online discussions argue that Grima's extreme physical decline, described as crawling and wretched, combined with years of starvation, manipulation, and abuse under Saruman, could plausibly lead to such depravity. Saruman's contemptuous tone and the lack of clear details about Lotho's fate fuel this theory. Some go further, suggesting Saruman encouraged or enabled it to degrade Wormtongue completely. Radagast the Brown helped Gandalf enlist the help of the Eagles. Supporters of this theory point to Radagast's deep bond with birds and his role as messenger between the wizards, noting that Tolkien describes him as having birds as his special friends and a unique ability to communicate with animals. When Gandalf tells the Council of Elrond that Radagast was instructed to send beasts and birds with news, fans argue this could include reaching out to the great eagles. Radagast's knowledge of bird speech, his title as Tender of Beasts, and his location near the Misty Mountains all position him perfectly to act as a liaison. Some believe Gwaihir's rescue of Gandalf was arranged through Radagast's avian network. His influence may have helped turn the tide. Gollum is the persona of all those who are corrupted by the ring. Supporters of this theory argue that Gollum is the embodiment of what happens to anyone who falls under the ring's power. His transformation is the most extreme, but fans note that every bearer shows pieces of Gollum's traits: paranoia, obsession, and duality. Gollum constantly speaks in we, reflecting the fractured mind the ring creates. Proponents suggest this is a symbolic identity identity the ring imposes, a template of corruption. The ring has a will, and Gollum, they argue, is its voice. His grotesque form, prolonged life, and broken soul are seen as the final stage of ring corruption. Frodo and Bilbo simply hadn't reached it yet. Saruman created new rings of power and gave one to Grima. Supporters of this theory focus on Saruman's claim to be Saruman the Wise, ringmaker, paired with the fact that he wears a ring when Gandalf visits Orthanc. Fans argue this is literal. Saruman studied Sauron's ring lore obsessively and tried to imitate his power, making it plausible he forged his own lesser rings. Proponents suggest he didn't stop at one, and that Grima, Wormtongue, his closest servant, was given one to ensure total obedience. This would mirror how the Nazgul were bound to Sauron. Grima's loyalty, weakness, and complete submission could be explained by magical influence, not just manipulation. A ring from Saruman could be the unseen force behind Grima's total control. If you enjoyed this, I post movie content a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.